Should be good to go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Sarnia Sarnia Police Service Board. So for Thursday, August 28th, welcome to staff, to my colleagues on the board, members of the community, members of the media. I'll start with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land on which the Sarnia Police Service operates is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirits of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. We'll move on to item 3. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4, ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Board Member Ash moves, Board Member McRoberts seconds. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. And then the minutes of the June 26th meeting, looking for a mover and seconder. Board Member Ash moves, Board Member McRoberts seconds. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, that's approved. And then that brings us to our item number 6, the new facility update. So we'll look forward to a presentation. And Chief, I'll ask you to introduce this part of the agenda.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce Travis Forrest with our architectural firm. Travis will provide us with a short presentation and a update on the facility. This is further to our presentation that was done to City Council and is coming to the board for further questions and an additional update. Travis, I think there's also a report that the board may have some questions about at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Travis.
Thank you, Chief Davis. Everybody can hear me okay?
You got the sound ready though?
Just turn the volume up, Travis, and we're all set.
Okay, great.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. And Chief, it sounds like you would like to hold questions till the end.
I'm sorry, it's not here.
Sorry, we're just going to keep working the sound here for 1 second.
It's in the flip volume.
Yeah, it's not coming through the TV though, is it?
No, it's coming from the owl.
Yeah. Are we able to put it through the TV? Sure. Then turn the owl off.
Paper on paper works better.
Right on, Travis?
Can you hear me okay? Doesn't sound like it.
It's worse.
Should be coming for the TV now.
Try it one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Great.
There you go.
There we go.
All right, perfect. So as I understand, Chief, then you'd like to hold questions to the end?
Through the chair, I think that's probably get through the presentation and then we can ask some questions.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I am Travis Forrest with Plus VG Architects. Through the beginning stages of this process, I had been joined by John Pepper, principal with RPL Architects. Unfortunately, fortunately for him, he's on vacation, enjoying sunny Ireland. So you'll just have to bear with me this morning. So as many of you already know, we began this process not too long ago with your chair, Paul Wiersma, and Chief Davis, and of course Jason Dale of the Sarnia Police Service. And it began by looking at possible locations, which again, as Chief mentioned, we we considered multiple sites that were offered to us and narrowed it down to one, which we then presented to council, which was approved. So we're beginning the process of proceeding on that basis. And everybody can see my screen okay?
Yes.
So this is the site that was selected. This is at London Line and Magdalen Road, just off Old London Road. There's an empty lot here, one of many that we had to select from. The main driver of the selection was road access. There may be some challenges here, but this was really the only one that gave us direct access to any major thoroughfares, and was most acceptable. The idea with this, and I can zoom in and out if you like. The idea being we would gain access off Old London Road coming into the facility. We'd have the primary facility, large parking area, and then a separate training building as well located on the site. And with the intent of having two access to facilitate ease of egress for emergencies for police vehicles. We've confirmed that Alexi Drive here does terminate at the property line and could be extended with a laneway there for access for our site. And then, of course, we get into cost. And I sort of wanted to paint a picture of some examples over the past call it 4 or 5 years, and just looking up similar type facilities. Some are not of the same size or scope, but it gives you an idea of where construction costs have come in for those facilities. And then I'll get into some historical data on our own projects and what the trends have been for construction costs over the last 5 years. So just doing some quick checking, Waterdown Police / Fire Station was a combination unit. They were only 43,000 square feet. Their cost per square foot was $1,280. And that would be due to what we call economy of scale. So these are intricate facilities, so they're more expensive than a typical building would be, or a typical office building would be to start. And the smaller the footprint, the tendency is for the higher cost per square foot. So you'll see that 43,000 square feet is $1,280 a square foot. And then if you look at Sudbury below it, they're at 194,000 square feet, and their economy of scale drops it down to 920. And you'll notice that it's not a huge, I mean, it's significant, but it's not a huge drop in terms of percentage of cost per square foot. There is a point at which even though your square footage is increasing, your economy of scale, you can take advantage of that to a certain point, and then it sort of flatlines at a certain point. So huge discrepancy in the size of these facilities, whereas a very moderate discrepancy in the cost per square foot. And then just as another example, both RPL and ourselves are teamed up on a current police project in Southern Ontario. Unfortunately, we've signed an NDA with Infrastructure Ontario. I can't give any particulars on it. However, I can say that it's a 35,000 square foot facility, which is made up of a detachment and a training facility, two separate buildings on one site, similarly to what we have planned here. This project is currently at 50% working drawings, and we have an updated Class C estimate from a professional costing firm, which indicates that facility to be at $1,100 per square foot. So comparable to the Waterdown sample above. Like I said, in applying economy of scale factor, which would be approximately 20% over the individual unit rates per division, we'd expect that this facility, which we've sized, preliminarily at 98,650 square feet, we're expecting the cost to be in the range of $850 to $950 per square foot. And of course, as we go through the project, right now we're at a very preliminary stage, so the costing is very high level, and we're simply basing it on what we've seen in the market and what we've seen in our own projects in terms of cost reductions. Now, we also work very closely on multiple projects with many professional costing firms. So we're in touch with them almost daily on those projects, and I get to pick their brain on what their feeling is in terms of this high level cost per square foot. So that also factors into sort of the numbers we're looking at here. Once we get more information, and also I'll show you the next steps, we can look at then retaining those costing firms to get a professional costing at various levels done, and that would reconfirm the numbers that we've established, and then allow us to modify our design to refine either up or down based on the costing that we see, and whether we're trending above the budget or trending below the budget, then we can adjust our progress as required. So like I said, we're looking at, for Sarnia Police Service, an approximate square footage of 98,650 at around 865 square feet. Per square foot puts us in the $85 million range for the base construction cost. And then we are including a project contingency of $3 million. This can be for miscellaneous items such as, surprises we may find on site, etc. And then, of course, we apply the architectural fee of around $3 million, which I'll go into in a later sheet as well. So this is and this is sort of a disclaimer just to let you know that this is not including soft costs such as taxes, tariffs, permit fees, special equipment, whatnot. It is, and we'll get as we, like I said, as we progress through the design and progress through the costing phases, then we'll get a better handle on or a tighter grip on what the actual costs are, and maybe some of these costs can come into that budget. And like I said, the preliminary order of magnitude is only cost directly related to construction activities, i.e. the general contract or contract value. So that's that $85 million number up there. And this is based on an average, what we've seen, and I leaned on John a bit. He's got 40 years experience in police facilities. We see an average of 325 square foot per person. So that's per staff person per facility, which is, where we get the rough value of the 98,650, but we've also added in a little bit for the training facility as well. So like I said, going into the cost trends that we've seen over the last 5 years, I grouped these projects not because they're similar to the project that we're looking at today, but because they're of the same market. These are all school projects that were tendered between 20 and 2024. So starting at the bottom, you'll see this school was tendered in 2020, and it cost $235 a square foot. And you'll see as we move through 2021, $295, 2022, much the same, 2023, slight increase there, and then again in 2023. And these two projects are not that far apart in timelines, only a couple of months. So within 2023, you see a jump from 300 to 420. And then in 2024, we see a bit of an easing at 385. But what that trend shows us is an approximate 60 to 70% increase in cost per square foot just in that market. And in talking with the professional cost firms that we deal with, this is typical across pretty much all markets. You may be aware, it doesn't impact sort of public buildings so much, but in the private sector, you may or may not be aware, but what we see is condo development essentially, hitting 2021 halted. We have, I believe, 4 or 5 large condo developments that have been on hold since that time. And the reason being is this cost per square foot, because that drives the profit margin essentially for those developers. They can only sell it at a certain cost per square foot, so that money has to make sense for them. So it's been due to these increases that they're halting those projects. So that gives you an idea of what's been going on. We did notice the first increase in construction market in 2018. It was unclear what was driving that, but of course, as 2020 hit, then things got a little crazy. And so that's what we've been seeing over the last 5 years. Then, of course, there are other impacts to construction costs, such as escalation. So escalation is your natural cost increase over time. And through those 5 years, we've seen escalation get up to as much as 12 to 15% per year, sometimes even more. For planning purposes, professional cost firms have advised at least to carry at least an 8% through those years. And so things are easing a bit as today, and these professional firms are telling us that we should be carrying 4% per year escalation. So escalation costs have come down. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that the increased construction cost per square foot that we're left with after this 5-year increase is coming down. It just means that cost isn't increasing as fast as time moves on. So this cost that you see right now, the 85 million, is as of today. As of today, next year, it'll be 4% higher just due to the market. And of course, this cost doesn't consider any tariff impacts, which, according to the news, we may not have to worry about in the near future, which would be great. Just to give you some insight on that, we're currently managing, I would say, 20 or 25 projects that are under construction. And we were expecting to get hit with a bunch of tariff impact costs from those projects, and we have seen very little. And in talking with the professional costing firms, they have also seen very little. Some people have panicked and bumped their budgets by 25%, but the cost professionals are telling us that realistically, if you did see those impacts across the board, it may be only a 10% impact on your project. But like I said, hopefully we don't have to worry about that in the near future. So getting into the architectural fees. We have guidelines that we follow through the Ontario Association of Architects and the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. And according to those guidelines, we should be in somewhere in the 6% range. We don't generally hit those recommendations. So we reviewed this project against similar project on similar timelines and determined that we can actually pull this into about 3.6% for this project. And this is always based on the construction value of the project. So 3.6% of construction value puts us around just over 3 million on the 85 million construction value. And because I'm just presenting this as not a formal fee proposal, I just wanted to reiterate that. And that just gives this is a very detailed list of what our responsibilities would be under those fees. So there's various phases of the project, schematic design. I think we're at a point here on this project where we're in preliminary design and about to get into schematic moving forward. And this involves, and there'll be more specific tasks to this project, but this involves reviewing program, codes, initial evaluations. There's mostly in this case, it's site evaluations. In terms of program, we'll get into that on the next steps in terms of determining stakeholder requirements. Then, of course, once we get into that, we'll be developing some preliminary conceptual designs, which will be gone back and forth with the stakeholders as we move through. Once we're in the end of schematic design, then we've established, you're at a point where you've established a building footprint, you've established some adjacencies and sizes of spaces. So at that point, we do a check. So we'll do an estimate of construction costs at that point, which will be based on more firm information than we have at this stage preliminarily. So that'll give us an idea, are we going in the right direction? With that accepted, then we move into design development phase. This is where we start getting into more detail and actually start developing the plans and whatnot that we'll be using for municipal approvals, et cetera. And then through that, and we'll be refining the design of each of the spaces with the stakeholders. And then again, at the end of that process, do another updated construction cost. So we can then gauge again, are we on track? And then make adjustments as necessary. With that signed off, then we move into the construction document phase. So this is where we develop our detailed drawings and specifications to come together with a complete package for the purpose of bidding the project to contractors. And again, through this process, we do updated estimates of construction. So you may choose to do one or two throughout that phase, or you may just choose to do one. We would recommend a minimum of Class B, which puts you at about 75% construction document phase. And this will tell you well in advance of tendering the project where to expect the project to come in. Some clients like even to do a Class A, which is much closer to the tender period, and that would give you, in theory, a much tighter number, but there isn't a lot of information being added to the project between 75% and say 90% that you do a Class A estimate. But that's, of course, we can discuss further as we get into that phase. So we do have checks and balances as we go on in terms of these costings that we do, just to make sure that we're all on track. Then, of course, we'll go through permits and approvals. That'll start. Some of that will start earlier with site plan approval, and then we'll get into building permits as we get closer to the tender period. We'll get into the tender period where, of course, we put it out to the bidders, and we receive questions, and we issue addenda to answer those questions. It closes. We'll make a recommendation based on the tender results for tender award. And then once awarded, of course, we're doing construction. So once in construction, we have a dedicated contract administration fee team that will be accessing the site. We recommend on a bi-weekly basis. There be a bi-weekly site meeting, which the contractor chairs. All relevant architects, engineers, et cetera, will be in attendance based on the work that's going on site. So we'll see the progress of what's going on site on a bi-weekly basis. We'll monitor the construction schedule. We'll review the schedule of values from the contractor. This is the breakdown of their price that they submit every month for payment. We review their invoice for payment, and we have them make any corrections as required. And then once we're okay with it, we issue a certificate to you stating we feel this is okay to pay. So it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders that way. Many steps throughout construction. There's shop drawings and supplemental details and instructions that need to be issued, questions through RFIs. We'll issue appropriate change orders for any changes required. We'll monitor the inspection and testing results through a third-party inspection company. They'll be inspecting things such as soils, compaction, concrete, steel, etc. And then once the project's nearing completion, we will do our series of reviews for deficiencies, etc. But we also have a comprehensive list of documentation and testing reports to be in place in order to sign off on the project to be substantial, complete, and ready for occupancy. So we're involved every step of the way right until you move in the end. And of course, through the warranty review, we hang on through the whole entire warranty period. So every time you have an issue with something, generally we get notified, and then we notify the contractor, and then we'll expedite the contractor addressing those issues. So as I said, we'll talk about next steps, sort of as of right now. So there's a bit of advanced work to be done. Conducting inventory of the current space, any offsite needs, and conducting programming interviews. So it's sort of get an idea for the staff and stakeholders as well as ourselves to compare what you've got currently to sort of your future space requirements. And this may just be information gathering sessions with staff, and could really be done simultaneous to the next step, advanced work and stakeholder interviews, wherein we propose to schedule a series of interviews with each department within the existing facility. The idea being, this is a huge information gathering opportunity for us in order to input accurately into the design what it is that each of your divisions or your departments require. We're suggesting maybe this takes place over 2 or 3 days. I've seen us schedule this over, a 2-week period, maybe 2 days, 1 week, 2 days, another week. It depends on availability, et cetera, and how detailed each department make it into their needs. Through those interviews, these are the various topics we would cover, and I think and Jason and I have been talking a bit on this, and we'd be looking at preparing questionnaires that go out to staff ahead of time to give them an idea of what the content would be of those interviews so that they can actually prepare their comments ahead of time. So part of that would be reviewing functions and responsibilities of each department, hours of operation, current space use, and any deficiencies in that, anticipated workload and staffing, whether a department expects that they're going to staff up by 2 or 3 persons over the next 10 to 15 years, changes in responsibility or methodology. Maybe you need more space for newer equipment or less space because you're getting newer equipment which is smaller. We'd also look at the space needs and adjacencies of different departments and personnel. Take that into consideration as to where we place this office versus that office, and how those people work together. We look at shared use of space, whether certain departments need to be segregated or they need to be combined, or like I said, maybe they just need to be beside each other. Furniture, equipment requirements, of course, storage requirements, which is always huge. I think every department will probably let us know that they need more storage. And of course, security requirements, access control, alarms, cameras, etc. Always a big component, and part of the fee that I showed you up top, we would be carrying a dedicated security firm who specializes in developing those designs. Excuse me. And then, of course, staff amenities, locker rooms, lunch and break areas, and any other special considerations. So that's sort of an overall high-level list. And like I said, we'd like to develop a questionnaire that goes out to staff ahead of time, and then we conduct those interviews and as information gathering sessions based on this sort of outline. And then I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the projects Plus PG and RPL have worked on over the past 5 to 8 years, I'd say. So first up is the Halton Regional Police Service, and you'll notice sort of the theme throughout is trying to use sort of timeless products, timeless materials. They're not going to, get dated in 10 years. So in doing this, we primarily stick to aluminum panels, masonry, glass, and maybe some metal siding as well. And then the Kingston Police, again, the use of metal panels, masonry, glass. The Niagara Regional Police Service, again, this is aluminum panels, masonry, and glass. Waterloo Regional was primarily panels, aluminum panels and glass with some metal siding. And then, of course, the St. Thomas Police Service was primarily masonry around the perimeter with glass obviously worked in and some minimal use of aluminum panels. Did add some wood touches on here for accents as well. And then currently both Plus VG and RPR are working conjointly on a few projects. This one is the, sorry for the image quality. I was trying to improve that. This is the existing Brantford Police Service headquarters, which is largely this lower building you see here. So currently we're adding, it's an existing 60,000 square foot building, which we're adding another 60,000 square feet to it. So this 3-story structure on the back is an entirely new addition. And most of the functions that are in the existing building right now will eventually take place in that 3-story space. We've done a massive expansion along this back corner of the number of garage bays that they have for tactical, for repairs, for forensics. I think we have close to 10 bays back there. And this is actually a net zero project, which includes removal and replacement of the entire existing roof. We're removing the entire masonry facade and windows of the existing building, upgrading the insulation and putting new aluminum and metal siding finishes around the entire building. So a fairly substantial project. And it's a phased project, and the idea at this point is that this large addition will be ready in January for occupancy, where we can start moving a lot of these personnel over, and then as those people move over, the construction will move into the existing facility and we'll start renovations throughout this lower portion. Another smaller project is the West Grey Police Headquarters. This is located in Durham. Again, it's a smaller region, so it's a smaller headquarters. But again, we used composite panels, masonry, and siding again for longevity, durability. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Travis. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think just for the benefit of the public and the media and the board, this really is, we're really at the early stages of this discussion. So this is actually a discussion item, not an approval item. This is the first time the full board has had an opportunity to meet with Travis, one of the architects. I know there has been a few meetings at the staff level prior to this. So I think what we want to do at this point is really just ask some high-level questions about, and I know I see my colleagues have written a number of questions down. That's great. So we'll just open it up and we'll have a bit of a discussion. So who would like to ask the first question? Board Member Gillis.
I have a number of questions, but there might be a duplication by my colleagues. So one of the first questions I have is what is, you probably said it and I probably didn't pick up on it. What is the actual square footage of the building that we're looking to build?
So right now we're approximating at 90,650 square feet, and that includes the headquarters as well as the training facility.
Okay, so looking at preliminary numbers and the fact that I've just toured the Brantford station, which is lovely, by the way, and good, very nice job that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I look at the fact that that one cost 57 million for the addition that you said was 60,000 square feet. Correct?
It's a bit of a different project in that new construction is 60,000 square feet there, but it also includes a 60,000 square foot renovation.
That's true. Yes, you're right. So but just taking those numbers and looking at the 57 million for your 60,000 square feet plus, your 98,000 square foot estimate of 91 million seems quite high to me. And I'm sure it will be to a lot of people who are trying to make a decision on this. I've noticed that there are many things that you're speaking about are just very broad view, very broad base, and doesn't include any other kind of synergies that we might experience with other emergency services that we have within the city. Also, it doesn't include any ideas of how we could create some synergies. And I know that's probably not what an architect would do, but I would think that I would see something in your drawings if we chose to go that path. Of course, would be a lot of discussion with other emergency services with that, but I think it's the conversation that we need to have in order to find out where exactly can we find money to build this. Because I do know that the money that was found for the Brantford addition was through development charges and on the levy. And that doesn't seem particularly palatable to a lot of people in the city, and I can well understand that. So I just give you that for information. But the other thing I wanted to know specifically was, is there a project manager for this, or are you relying on a project manager from the city?
I think I would let either Paul or Chief Davis address that.
Yeah, so I'll make a couple comments and then I'll ask the chief to fill in the gaps. So once again, we're really at the early stages of this. So we have not secured Plus VG and RPL as the architects who designed the project yet. That hasn't been approved yet. The other thing we haven't done is you talked a little bit about how the project would be funded. Of course, Travis would be able to speak to that. Yeah. That'll really be part of the next agenda item where we make the request for funding to the city. So, and then as for the discussion about synergies, I'll let the chief speak to that. There have been some best practices across the province, and Chief, do you want to pick up on that?
Sure. I think one of the first thing that comes to mind for me is we did look at a number of different sites that the city had available. This is probably the largest available space that was provided at 11.6 or so acres, so smaller than what we had originally estimated. And I think given some water features around the side, I think and Travis can jump in here, but I think we're pretty tight on that footprint. If we wanted to expand and include, say, a fire or some sort of other, I think we need to look for alternative land. I think we're running out of space to be able to do, unless we go straight up, but then that creates other issues. So I certainly understand the synergy. If we can find synergy, that would be great. I will reiterate again that although there are campus models out there, they're a fairly broad footprint, and we do provide very different distinct services other than sharing HVAC and some of those pieces which would be there, yeah. But very, very different in terms of what emergency services mean.
Yeah, and thanks, Chief. And in terms of the site itself, again, we are at the preliminary stages, so there are some site investigations that have to be done in terms of geotechnical to verify what the soils are and what any mitigation measures are. In terms of the layout, I would say Chief Davis is correct in laying out with our footprint and our expected footprint, our expected parking footprint, as well as the training facility. I think we'll be taking up a good portion of that site. I do know there may be archaeological items down in this corner that we need to avoid. So I think where we've got it located will work for this site, barring any unforeseen geotechnical conditions that we might have to mitigate. But it is a pretty tight site for what we need. It is smaller, like Chief Davis said, than what we were initially looking for.
So we'll come back to your board member Gillis, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Board
just like
members.
follow up.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, with regard to the size of the space, one thing that I noticed when we were touring Brantford, that they are on their second renovation of a building was built in 1991. So clearly they are expanding well beyond their footprint. And I'm looking at what we asked for, and given the information we know now, you're right, that footprint would be quite tight if we tried to bring in other agencies. However, we need to think beyond today. We need to think for the future of what we're building. Because if all the other police stations that we've seen outgrow their footprint within 10 years, we don't want to be caught having to do that again. So we want to be able to incorporate in some way an opportunity to expand on the site that we have, whatever the site that is. And currently right now it's this one. So I just put that out to you because just going to Brantford and seeing a $57 million project on a building that was put in 1991, and it's their second renovation. So that tells you what's happened. So I leave it there. Thank you very much for letting me have that follow-up.
And I can clarify on that. Sorry, I apologize. I may not have mentioned it as I was going through the presentation, but we did allow for 20% growth within that square footage. So which is projected over the next 15 years, and that was through discussions with Chief Davis.
Board member Sebastian, you had your hand up earlier. If you would like to speak.
Thanks, Paul. My questions were related to Anne-Marie, where Anne-Marie was going. So square footage as per population and usage of land. So thank you.
I did want to also make the comment when we talk about synergies. I know that working with other municipalities in terms of providing policing also would be a great synergy, and there's always conversations that take place about how to be most efficient in terms of providing adequate and effective policing throughout Sarnia-Lambton. So even in terms of future options and growth, that's certainly something to keep in mind as well. Board member Ash, did you want to
Well, I just,
get in here?
through the chair to Mr. Forrest, you referenced the current project that with the NDA that you can't disclose what it is. That's coming in at 1,100 square foot, and we're coming in at 865. So that's a drastic difference. Can you explain what the differences would be? Would it be like scope of the area, or because it's a police service that project is, right?
Yeah, so that's we initially that project, when we were at this stage was budgeted at $1,500 a square foot. We're currently at a Class C estimate stage, which is say 50% drawing stage, which is just coming in at $1,100 a square foot. So we've been able to bring that down through the costing refinements. But when you see the difference between that facility and say the proposed 98,000 square feet, this is where what I call economy of scale comes into play. That project total square footage is only 35,000 square foot. So it costs more per square foot because it's smaller. Whereas this is a much larger facility, so your cost per square foot is going to come down based on that.
So if we go bigger, it'll get smaller?
Like I said, there is a flat line point we could see here from the Sudbury example. If you look at Waterdown at 43,000 square feet, which is $1,280. Sudbury is much larger, 194,000 square feet, and it only came down to $920. So at some point, between, call it 100 and 120,000, 150,000 square feet, at some point you lose that economy of scale. So it's hard to say where that point is. That could vary with market conditions, what kind of pricing the contractors are coming in at. It's difficult to predict. We know there is an economy of scale, and we're able to predict sort of what we expect to happen. But like I said, the market's going to determine a lot of that.
So the 91 million that we're being quoted, it's not actually a quote. This is just a high level estimate of this is the potential that this project could cost, but not necessarily will cost.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at this as a budget, right? And as I said, if we get through the schematic design phase, then we'll do another costing. But at that point, it'll be done by a professional costing firm. And if that costing comes in higher than what we expected, then we'll make refinements. If it comes in lower, then we'll probably just stay where we're at with the design, and keep working within the budget.
Thank you.
Board Member Roberts, go ahead.
I know that this is a high scale at this point. I have two questions. Is it required to have the training facility separate? Or can that be built? I mean, I understand that if we add a second, third, fourth layer to a building, it's less cost than building a whole different one with foundation and running all the infrastructure to that. So, and I understand that we'll probably have other communities coming to train, but they can come in a separate door. So that's my first question. Are we spending our money the best way instead of amalgamating it all in one and then having that land to potentially use for a different service or whatever, that little section at the back? I don't even know how big that was. Second question is the building, different products like the glass or the wood or the steel or the aluminum. Is there a better cost one way or another? Because we're not worried about being pretty. We're worried about, is this going to be a good cost with a lasting product, and just go with that route?
Yeah, and we actually incorporated a lot of that into the Brantford project, where we're using corrugated metal siding on a lot of the surface area there, just to hit those budget targets for that project. So the same could apply here. Of course, the aluminum is more expensive than the metal siding. The more glass you put on, the more expensive that's going to be. So, like I said, if we want to come up with something that's functional, something that looks good, and something that's durable over time. If we get to the next cost estimate stage, and we see that we're not meeting our budget requirements, then those are the types of refinements we can start looking at materialistically to come in line with the budget.
And the first question about if we added the training facility to the top, adding it to the main building, would that save us any money?
I think it comes down to sort of the intended use. I believe there was talk of outside facilities sharing or using that training facility as well. Also comes down to what type of training is being done and what is what kind of interruption might that have to a facility if it were attached to it. I don't know, Chief Davis, if you can speak to the preference there.
So I'll just speak to some practical policing uniqueness that we have. There's a lot of ground floor utility that has to be in a police service. So I'll give you the example. Prisoners need to be on the ground floor. We don't want to be carrying people up and down stairs. They need to be into a drive-through Sally Port, need to have access. Same with a firing range. Modern firing ranges are ground level so that vehicles can access. The new Halton one, for example, has the ability to bring a vehicle into the range so that officers can train in real life circumstances, those types of situations. The other consideration with the training facility is noise. Gunfire needs to be sound contained. I can speak to our old Halton facility with the original headquarters. The range was in the basement, and you could hear gunfire throughout the entire building all the way up to the second floor, which was disruptive to our clerical staff and others, and we had a lot of complaints at that time. So this is that particular part needs to be somehow sound controlled, and a separate facility provides that. The other aspect is the other parts of training. If you look at our PTAC facility, no range component, but we do have to have an area for physical training, defensive tactics, and any kind of dynamic judgment, those types of things. So again, it's not all just classroom. When we talk about training, it's not necessarily academic, which could go on higher floors. I know in my previous experience in other buildings, also your uniform operational functions tend to be at the ground level. So that ground footprint is highly operational and tends to be where those particular services are located. And then as you go up in a building with multi-floors, you'd add your investigators, your administrative types, like somewhere up there. And you've got to consider things like property, evidence, continuity. If you're moving things through a building, like you have to contain all these different components. So there's a lot of pressure on that ground floor. And Travis, feel free to jump in here, but there's a lot of that footprint.
If I can with the pressure.
Yeah.
There's a pressure for how much money we're spending too. And I want you to have what you need.
Yep.
But sometimes we have to give a little to make it all work.
Yeah, I completely respect that and the challenges that the city faces. From a policing perspective, though, we have legislative requirements. We have so it's my job as chief, I think, to make sure the board's fully informed so the board can make the decision. There's been a lot happened since the late 80s in terms of what our requirements are, safety, even things as like if there's you've seen the papers, a lot of drug arrests, a lot of fentanyl. We need a place to be able to safely process those. You don't want to walk them through an office area and have that type of, a substance that's not contained in a well-ventilated, properly lit place. Things we don't have currently. So there's a lot of those other modern considerations that would never have been a factor in back in the day. So I think we do look for some of those efficiencies where we can double utilize space. We're in a 24/7 operation. Can we have multi areas? Like this room as the classic example, this is the morning and evening briefing room. And then we multi-use it through the day for other purposes, including the board meetings, community meetings. So we can look for some of those efficiencies. But the challenge for policing is a lot of those very distinct and unique requirements that we have. And I'm not pushing that one way or the other. I'm just saying those are things that we have to meet those.
Just to follow up from Christy, I'll change your name now. So I understand not wanting to incorporate it into the space, the main building, but I understand what Christy is saying as well by having it connecting at least.
We can't. We could. I'm just saying these are the considerations in the design. So if you do the
Right.
footprint, and again, I'm not an architect clearly, but in terms of even vehicle flow, like if you're going to put a range, you just wherever it ends up going, it's got to be accessible. You still got to have the drive-through for the like some of those. So I'm sure there's a way to configure it, and yes, you can attach it, but the footprint, it's probably going to end up on the ground, and it'll like the square footage on the ground will be the same. Maybe there's a connection for the HVAC component or something like that.
But I think that's what you were getting at is if it's attached to the main building, would it be less expensive as opposed to a secondary building? So that was the basis of the question, not so much.
In terms of the construction costs, I can speak to that because whenever we attach a facility like that to an existing building, the wall's separating. Like the chief said, there's huge noise consideration. So that wall is essentially built as a double wall so that any noise or reverberations do not transfer to the main building. So you're essentially building the exact same separate building, you're just sliding it over close to the existing building. We would actually leave a 2-inch separation so that we don't get that transfer of sound over.
So there wouldn't be a cost savings to do it. It's like attaching it, having it attached.
I would say not significant, no.
Travis, could you speak to because I think you had mentioned it in an earlier session, the cost per square foot of building up as opposed to building out? Like, is it less expensive to try to have fewer floors?
To an extent. And it depends on your needs as well. So obviously, two stories is very common. If you have a one-story building, then you have no stairs, no elevators. You have a two-story building, now you have stairs and elevators. You have a three-story, you have the same stairs and elevators. You get into 4 stories, those requirements become more stringent. And the higher you go, the more life safety requirements you've got. So that, again, with everything else, there's a balance. 2 stories is a pretty good balance economically, I would say.
Perhaps I also wanted to ask, so the board made a decision to go with a new facility based on the recommendations of 2 engineering reports that were commissioned. However, I am aware that there is discussion in the community about why we simply couldn't renovate this existing building. Could you maybe speak to renovating an existing building versus building new, just from your experience and from a cost point of view?
Well, speaking specific to the existing Sarnia Police Service building, there just isn't enough site or footprint to work with for the current needs, let alone the 20% growth for the future. And also it'd be a huge disruption to the ongoing operations of the building. To try and do that piecemeal without impacting the operations, you'd be, renovating very small areas at a time. There'd be, I don't even know how many phases you'd have to do that in order to not impact the police service. It would be extremely difficult. Almost infeasible when, as John and I were touring the facility, it's kind of hard to wrap our heads around. Much different than if you look at our Brantford project, that's an existing 60,000 square foot. We're adding on to that while that 60,000 square feet is in full operation. And then once we're done the addition, then we're going to start moving people over, and that'll be a continuous operation of that facility. So that's much easier, but we don't have the space available to build a new facility beside the existing one and then move people over while we renovate the existing in this case. So, extremely difficult.
Could I ask you to just in broad terms, a timeline? So we had talked about obviously having to have approval for the funding for this project. Assuming that was in place, what would be the timeline in terms of when the design would be complete, when it would go out to tender, and when the earliest possible construction could start?
So for a facility like this, the design period is typically around a year. And at that point, we're nearing the end, you're reaching the end of your working drawing phase, at which point you can tender the project. That's going to take a couple of months. And then once the contractor's on board, if it's not a phased project, like I would assume that something of this size is going to be, in the 24 to 30 month range in terms of construction time. So you're looking at, a year to finish drawings, fastest time, 2 years to build. So completion at the very earliest in 3 years. It probably would be within the 4th year, I would say. And then within that, we have to consider municipal approvals. Those are taking longer and longer these days, but I assume we would meet some friendly people within the city that could assist us with those timelines.
So the earliest it could possibly go to tender would be the fall of 2026. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair timeline.
I'm going to look to the board if there's any further questions or feedback to Travis.
No, not Travis.
Staff, did you have any questions for Travis or comments, Chief?
Thanks. Just Travis, just one question. We spoke a lot about the Brantford project. When did that go to tender? Are you able to give us just what year that project was anchored to?
If you give me 1 second, I can give you a more accurate answer.
Just given the annual price changes, just want to know where that one landed.
Well, it's almost done, right? So that would have been 2020.
January, they moved.
Yeah. So the phase one is almost done. So it was spring 2024 when tenders were finalized. So, but the closing was in very early spring 24.
Thank you.
Travis, could you speak to some of the work that's taking place currently? I understand that we did have funding set aside to begin some initial work in terms of land studies and the like. Could you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so we've Jason and I have had some back and forth with Chris at the city and researching some existing environmental studies, archaeological studies, and from that we've sort of determined we'd like to move forward to get an updated survey. And also we'd like to move forward to get some geotechnical information so we understand what the soils restrictions are for the site. So those are sort of the more immediate steps. And I think with that in place, we'd have enough, and then going through the preliminary design, we'd have enough to put through sort of an initial site plan package for municipal approval.
You're working with the city staff then?
Yes, yeah.
Chief?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Travis, I know there's a big number attached to this conversation, and one of the conversations that occurs in the public space is that this is, I'll phrase it as a high-end, like a Taj Mahal has been mentioned. Can you speak to like the design concept? Is this aligned with other projects in terms of fanciness, for lack of a better term, like industry standards? Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, and it's much the same as I've showed some examples. Some are more intricate than others. But I think Brantford's still a good example here. It's not fancy at all. We've largely gone with metal siding for budgeting reasons, and you're not giving up too much aesthetically when you do that. Depending on how you arrange it and which colors you select, which siding profiles you select. So the intent here is establish a budget and work within it. So like I said, we'll get to within the schematic design phase, we would get to a point where we've established what this shape of this building looks like and what the expected materials are. Then we would have a professional costing done on it, and at that point we would know, are we on target or not, and we can make material adjustments at that point in time. Or maybe it's I don't think it would be, but you may do some square footage cutting at that time. It's sort of the costing, the incremental costing throughout the design phase, basically leads you where you need to go from the budgeting perspective, and what sort of materials you may or may not be selecting to fit with inside that.
Okay, just before we adjourn this part, Board Member Gillis, go ahead. I was
Thank
going to
you.
call you Counselor, which you are too.
That's okay, not a problem. I wear many hats. One thing I wanted to ask you, sir, is that you mentioned that Brantford is a net zero building. And one of the things that we were talking about, whilst I was there, was what would be the return on investment? Because yes, it does cost more, but the operational costs for the building overall are supposed to make that a bit of a wash. Do you have any idea, being an architect, could you calculate that out for us? So the monies that they have paid for the new addition that's net zero, what's the return on the investment and how long will it take? I don't expect it right now.
No, I can speak to this at a very high level. Your initial capital cost, your return on that is actually a very, very long time. The idea behind net zero is not for those two things to even out. The idea is the environment to the impact on the environment. So, you know, you may put in all this extra money up front to achieve net zero. You're adding insulation, maybe triple glazing, solar panels for power generation, and all of this in terms of net zero is to offset carbon, of course. And then the reality in the end is you're still going to be purchasing credits. So in terms of, you know, it's not something people are doing to save money on operations.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
All right, well, thank you very much, Travis. Really appreciate all the information and wish you well for the rest of your day.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, so that was great. And that brings us nicely into the next agenda topic. So that's the talking about requesting the funding for the project. I know the chief has his name beside it, and I'll certainly defer to him. But I want to just make a few introductory comments. So just, you know, particularly for the public as well to understand kind of the history here. So the board did commission 2 different engineering studies to take a look at the building condition of the present facility, as well as the functionality of the present facility. And those studies suggested that that a new facility would be the best option. The board approved a new facility, and so that sort of set in stage or set the process for the next few steps, and that was that funding was secured through the budget, $500,000 to be able to initiate some of the consultation services with the architects, and so that's underway as well. So City Council approved that. City Council also approved the allocation of up to 15 acres of land at the east end of Wellington Street. And then subsequent to that, City Council approved the allocation of the specific property that we are looking at. So there have been approvals all the way through the process, and we're very, very, very appreciative of the support of City Council. When we had conversations with city staff about what do we do next, what's the next step, how do we get this project approved in terms of the funding, and the advice we got from city staff was to make that as part of the budgetary process for the city. And you know, we don't know what the exact cost is going to be. We, as we heard from Travis, it's a preliminary order of magnitude estimate. I think that's what he's calling it, for $91.1 million. So that's what we want to go with. But you know, we don't know exactly what the cost is going to be, and we understand that there are going to be further approvals down the road. But what we need to do is we need to get approval from City Council to move this project from the unfunded list to the funded list so that we can move forward. We certainly don't want to spend $3 million in design fees if we're not going to move ahead with the project. And so the advice of the city staff was to put the amount through the budgetary process, allow City Council to make a decision on it, understanding that it's not exactly 91.1, that's an order of magnitude estimate, and then you know, we can go from there. And I asked Travis specifically about the time at which we have to tender the project, or the earliest point. That would be the fall of 2026. So because of that, it really needs to go through the budgetary process for 2026, and that's why it is before us today. Chief, I'll ask if you want to, your report was very thorough, but did you want to speak to it at all?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in addition to your summary, there is just that the CSPA compels the Police Service Board to ensure police facilities comply with prescribed standards and to provide estimates to the municipal council. And those sections are in there. So I believe this is part of that legislative process through the board to provide those capital estimates to the city.
Okay, so let's just we'll just take some questions and then I'll ask for a motion to be Board Member Ash.
It's not necessarily a question, but a comment. So one of the things that I've seen a lot of lately is the reference to the $4 million that was quoted in one of the reports. The illusion out there is that that $4 million will fix this building to where we need it to be. Can you speak to, probably Jason might be the best one, but that $4 million, to my understanding, was to bring the building up to code to where it needs to be, not necessarily for us where it needs to be, but for just helping. Yes.
Through the chair, that's correct. Board Member Ash, that's one is the physical structure of the building regardless of occupant. And that's $4 million to fix the steps, to fix the ramp, to fix the windows, all the things that are physically in the building. The second study is specific to the needs of a police service, which we've spoken to earlier today, that are very distinct and unique, and that the current facility in its current form does not meet. Jason, anything else with those?
Just to give you an example, the front steps don't meet AOTA accessibility standards, nor would they meet a modern building code. We received quotes to replace the front steps and bring them up to modern standards of between $1 million and $1.5 million. That's just the front steps. So that's the sort of things we're getting.
As a follow-up to that, the other part of that study of the needs analysis was that this building was not able to be brought up to where we needed it to be. If we couldn't expand on it, we can't go up, we can't go out. There is no other alternative for us at this point. We're not substituting a $4 million renovation that would bring it to where we are for a $91 million building. That's not even the same thing, correct?
I would also, one of my observations in preparing for this meeting was reflecting on our last meeting where we approved the 10-year capital forecast, and it suggested that over the next 10 years, there would be several millions of dollars that would need to be spent on various items in the building as they come to the end of life. So really, it's not even 4 million, but it's potentially many more million, the longer we are in this facility. Board Member Carter.
If I can, on top of all of that. What are we allowed to say? What do we pay in rent for the Lambton Mall?
Yeah, it's 60 to 70,000 a year and going up every year.
60, 70,000 every year.
Mhm.
Did we pay for the land to expand our parking lot? So we bought that too.
No,
Oh,
rent.
we rent. So what do we pay for that?
5,000.
Okay. And then we have to still look after all of this, plus the mall will up and up and up, because why not screw us over? Why not make more money when we have nowhere else to go? So how much are we bleeding out every year? And we're gonna try and fix this up, or we can just start from scratch and allow the city to have this asset, sell it or rent it to someone else. If we move to.
I guess in terms of the big picture, there's a couple of things that kind of come into the total cost of the project. One is this is a city asset.
Yes.
The building and the land remains the property of the city of Sarnia, and that value returns to the city of Sarnia to dispose of or utilize any way the city sees fit. The PTAC, the mall rental place, I will say it's been a great facility in terms of academic training and our physical training, and that project was necessary at the time. We're looking at what is the long-term sustainability, and then we have the range issue, which is part of the training, which of course connects to. The other factor is the cost of this. Right now, we're holding off on major, like multi-million-dollar repairs of this facility, because if this project proceeds, we don't want to spend money unnecessarily on something we're going to be leaving that may be repurposed. It seems to be a waste. So there's going to be a cost to stay here. There's going to be a cost to delay, as Travis discussed, and there's going to be some things that will shift in terms of the total cost of a new project. So It's the 91 million minus the opportunity costs, minus the, whatever this land or this tax base would be worth in this particular location. There's a number of that. It's not as simple as it looks. And as Board Member Ash mentioned as well, there are conflated reports. 4 million is just the physical to code, and that does not meet the second report, which is all the things we have to change in terms of how to make this meet the standards of a current organization in terms of police operations.
What do we also pay to go to another site for the rifle training? Because
The cost isn't high, the cost is in time. So go ahead. Yeah.
Through Mr. Chair, we travel to the nearest range, which is Chatham, which is the better part of an hour drive. So when you start factoring that in, the time that it takes to get there, the time that it takes to clean the weapons, when they get back to here, we're losing days each time that we go essentially for that training. And the training regiment is increasing significantly. Every single officer who's on patrol must be patrol rifle qualified and must train twice per year, which means that every officer is essentially spending a day driving back and forth to Chatham over the course of a year. And that is significant impact on our operations. When you say it's just a day, when you take one officer off the road for a day, that's depleting our complement of officers that are available to take
one more
the
time.
regular.
And if we build a really nice range with the new building, we could be the ones having everybody come to us for the training. Well, some people come.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is the issue that we face, right? We've heard talk that London wants to build a training facility and invite everybody from Southwestern Ontario to go there. That doesn't help us. It's the time it takes to get there. So I don't envision that Chatham would say, wow, we can move to Sarnia now and decommission their range, or London doesn't do theirs, because everybody faces the same challenges. It's the time it takes to get there. So I think that.
Board Member Giltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to come back to the renovations of Brentford and just put that into perspective. When we're talking about we should do renovations over building new. Again, I said that it was $57 million on this renovation in 2025. They also renovated the building in 2008. They built it in 1991. If you take in all of that, that's well exceeding what we're even looking at. So also the chief of Brantford said, recommended as well, do not renovate. The interruption to your police service, your 24 hours, is horrendous. And we saw it ourselves where people were moving from cubby to cubby because as one part of the building was being done and it was completely revamped in its IT. So that's every corner of the building. People had to move, and you're trying to run your police station and provide adequate and effective policing. So it really came home to me that we're better off to build new than to try to renovate this building, which we don't even know if it has asbestos in it. I'm sure it does, considering when it was built. So at that point, and I'm not raising alarms. It's but when it's disturbed, when it isn't, it's fine. But you have to factor that in if you're going to sell the building or demo the building or whatever you do. It's going to end up costing the city more just for that alone, if that's an issue. So taking that in mind, looking what you want to build, you'll be far better off. You will save in the long run of what you're trying to build on the site that the land is basically been given to us. So therefore, there's no cost to the land. So we don't have to worry about that. That's one big thing of our plate. But I do want to ask if this can be approved in principle, because I would like to know a little bit more about the fact that you say it's in the unfunded list, get it over to the funded list. I want to know from the finance officer of the city if that can be an incremental thing. And I think we did that with the fire stations. We put them on the funding list, but we did it incrementally. So you're not hitting the taxpayer of $91 million in a year. And as the architect has already said, it's going to be incremental payments that you're going to have to pay up because you build as you go, like you pay as you go, that type of thing. So I need to have that information in my brain because we're going to be talking about this in budget time. And I don't want to have one body approve it and the other body just throw it away. So if that could be,
Yeah,
I
so-
appreciate that.
I'll make a comment. I'll look to the chief and to the director of corporate services that wants to jump in as well. So in this package, you see that there's a specific form, 2026 capital project request. This is a form from the city of
Yes,
Sarnia. So really what we're doing is we're following the process that's been suggested to us to follow. And that is to approve the request at this level and then send it to the city of Sarnia as part of their budgetary discussions. When we've talked to the city treasurer, she has indicated that if and when city council approves this project from being unfunded to funded, then the staff will provide options to the city how it's going to be funded. So, and even at one point I had suggested, well, maybe you could explain some of that to us as a board. It was suggested that that's not really our prerogative as a board to decide how things are funded, or whether it's over so many years, or whether it's levies or development charges or borrowing or whatever. So we were assured that this would be the step to take to get it into the hands of city council. So I know that as a board, and the discussion continues, that we're agreed that a new facility is needed at this point. We haven't made any suggestion on what the design is going to be. We haven't approved any spending at this point. Really, all we're looking at right now is an estimated order of magnitude. I wish we had more information. I wish I could say, well, it's going to be exactly this.
Mhm.
But that's, once again, that would be putting the cart before the horse. And we don't want to invest the $3 million in the design fees if that's not the way we're going to go. So really, I guess my summary of this is to say that we're following the process that has been suggested to us to move this to the next step.
And to follow up with that, Mr. Chair, because we are councillors and responsible to organizations, it does say the start date is 2026, the end date is 2030. So that means you can spread it over 4 years, which is an interesting question.
Answered your question.
Chief and Kathy, did you any further comments on any of that?
Yeah, I agree with you. This is just high level. The details would become sharper as we pass each stage.
All right, well, good discussion. And I don't know about you, but when we talk about magnitudes of this amount, I get sort of that sick feeling in my stomach. But I think we've done our due diligence as a board. We've followed the steps. We've listened to the advice of our consultants, and so at this point I would look for a motion to make this recommendation, and that is that the Sarnia Police Service Board approve the submission of the 2026 capital budget request for $91.1 million to City Council. Board Member Ash moves that. And the seconder. Board Member McRoberts, thank you. Any further questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. Thank you very much. Good, thank you. All right, well, let's all take a breath here, and that was a good decision. All right, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, and that is the strategic plan renewal process. Chief, I'll ask you to speak to your report, please.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So this is, it's hard to believe, but in the fall of 2022, when the board first allowed me to be the chief of Sarnia, we went through a long process of strategic plan development, and that plan is expiring at the end of this year, and it's time to renew the strategic business plan. This plan is owned by the board. It's the board's governing document, if you will, that frames up the next several years for the administration of the service in terms of our goals and objectives. And there are some prescribed requirements that come through this consultative process in terms of how we reach out to the community, how we gather information, and how we provide the board with the information necessary to determine what that strategic approach will look like for the next several years. So in the report, we are proposing through the board that in addition to the breakdown of the Community Safety and Policing Act that's there, that we engage with our public and again offers some public town halls so that the people in the community will have an opportunity to speak to some of the strategic objectives of the police service. We would include a public survey. It would include internal survey and internal town halls for the members of the Sarnia Police Service, both civilian and sworn. We would also propose the opportunity to have the police board meet and speak with some of our other governing bodies, such as Sarnia City Council, Amjanong Band Council, local school boards, and also invite anyone from a diverse community or individual groups that would like to delegate and provide information into this planning process. So it is I expect to take several months, although the survey and the town halls will be largely completed in September. Again, this is a board directed process, and we're happy to adjust as the board sees fit.
Thank you. I know that the last time we did this, I really enjoyed the process, being out at the stakeholder meetings, hearing from the public. The public had a lot of really important things to say, and I'm glad that many of them were incorporated into the strategic plan and they became priorities for this board. Any questions or comments about the report for the chief? I'll look for a motion to that the board approve this process as outlined. Board member McRoberts moves. Board member Gillis seconds. Questions, comments? Sorry, board member Sebastian, was that a question or comment, or was that or were you had your hand up to second?
I was seconding. Thanks, Paul.
All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. And that brings us to the monthly operation update. Our deputy chiefs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the operational update for this meeting, we chose to highlight a few summer specific projects that were on the go. And the first one that we did highlight was an interesting theft of a Sea-Doo, which resulted in somebody absconding from the country, making their way into the US. And it just, it's timely in that there's a lot of scrutiny about border security within Canada now and the attention that the federal government's giving it. So we also looked at this as an opportunity for us to enlighten everyone of what the capabilities of the Sarnia Police Service, or I guess the lack thereof, and what we do to address the waterways that border our city. The CSPA is pretty specific about the requirements of the police service to patrol the water, which that are described as navigable. And certainly ours are. We have one of the busiest international ports, and this incident just highlighted the proximity that we have with them. And certainly our relationship with the RCMP has grown with the focus that they've put on border integrity. We've had great conversations with them and what their capabilities in the water, in the air, but also to just reinforcing our relationship with them to allow them to use our facility. So all of those major drug busts that you hear about at the Blue Water Bridge, the RCMP are using our station for their interviews as a landing spot for their people who come from out of town, and also using our cells to house those individuals prior to them going to bail court. And even on occasion, they'll use our interpreters as we have great magnitude of language abilities within our service. So it's been great reinforcing that. So subject to any questions with respect to the Sea-Doo incident, I just wanted to highlight a number of
so I understand that we have an agreement with the OPP to support patrolling the waterways, and as you described, we work closely with the RCMP as well. At what point, as a future priority, should the board be thinking about bringing any of those services in-house, or is that really a very difficult thing to do for a service this size?
Through Mr. Chair, I think that the opportunities are there for us. So the relationship with the OPP is essentially to hand it to them to say, to provide adequate policing to the city of Sarnia, can you please control the waterways, enforce the law, respond to emergencies. And with their presence in Lambton County, they have the ability to do it, which they do. But when we see Sarnia specific incidences, we are now at the mercy of their availability, of their response time. And I'm not exactly sure what that entails. When we have emergencies on the water, our best ally is the St. Clair County Sheriff. They are immediately on the water and they offer us everything. It would be great to be able to have the ability for us to be able to respond in a timely fashion. And we would have to explore that through sourcing equipment, through I guess, innovative means, because it's not cheap, but certainly we're going to avail ourselves to any training opportunities, or if partner agencies want to partner with respect to use of the vessel, for instance. So
And do we
there is some
collaborate
opportunities.
with Sarnia Fire and Rescue as well?
We would rely on Sarnia Fire Rescue for emergencies on the water, but I can speak specifically to an incident that happened earlier this year where they had their made their boat available to us to access an individual who was on the rocks in the Sarnia Bay. So yes, there is some collaboration there, but the functions that we do are far different. We will never ask the Sarnia Fire to take us out on patrol, right, and to enforce laws or deal with crimes as they're happening. That would be just emergency search and rescue and stuff like that that we would rely on.
Board Member Ash and then Board Member Gills.
They did.
You can go first. Through the chair to Dr. Vanceville, OPP has one vote for Lambton County, which is Grand Bend to Sombra.
Yes, that's my understanding.
As a voter, I can tell you that's a very long ride on the water, and I have a fast boat, and it's a very long ride. So I think maybe the OPP needs to get another vote because we're spending enough money.
Can I repeat
Yes,
this?
go ahead.
Thanks, thank you, Mr. Chair, again, for using the critique. A couple of questions came up to my mind. Where's the Coast Guard? No, the Coast Guard is in Windsor. We have a station. Do we not have a Coast Guard somewhere here? And we do in the city. Are they not out patrolling?
My understanding is no, they're not.
We have a building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, when we have an emergency, we call Trenton. That's our first call.
Yes, I know.
And then they would
Dispatch somebody.
dispatch the RCMP if they had their auxiliaries. We do hear about the auxiliary of the Coast Guard,
Yeah.
not the RCMP, who they'll send us a message periodically to say we have our auxiliaries on the water for a couple of times this summer. Please give us a call. But we do not see any Coast Guard patrol or presence on the water, other than the large vessel that's stationed that's responsible for the Great Lakes.
And yes, US. We see the US all the time, yeah. But the point being that we used to have, and this used to be their role to patrol multiple waters on the international border. When you bring up the fact that safety and security of the international border is paramount now to Canada and to our Prime Minister. The RCMP used to be stationed here, and we had the IBAT team here. My brother was on that, and they sent everything down to Windsor. So it seems that all roads lead to Windsor, but nobody seems to recognize that Sarnia is border crossing. And if anything, we're easier to, except for the rapids, I suppose, but it's just over the US. So back and forth, we're missing a lot. We have CBSA here, we do have RCMP, we have OPP who does what you are describing and also on the roads. But when it comes to something as important as adequate and effective policing on an international border, I believe that we need to have all the tools that are given to anyone on the international border, be their population 103 or the population being 72,000 plus. Because the issues are so grave and we are paying tariffs as a result of border security. So it seems logical that we should open up that conversation and that we should go to the feds and say, look, you're missing us. And we have the second largest border crossing of hazardous goods. No, it's the first of hazardous goods in Canada, certainly in Ontario. Windsor cannot take hazardous goods, and I don't know what's going to happen with Harry with the Gordie Howe Bridge and how they're going to work that out. But we are pivotal to the economy. We are pivotal to the security of our country. So therefore, we should be getting the same resources as everybody else across the country. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask or make a motion, if I may, that we explore this. We reach out to the governing bodies and talk about border security at the city of Sarnia, particularly with Sarnia Police Service, and how that works in tandem with the Customs and Immigration, CBSPA, or whatever their acronym is now. And also the fact that our airport is a port of entry as well. So when you look at where we're even looking at situating our police station, it's in close proximity to our airport, which is a port of entry. So where do we fit in that puzzle? And if we have to raise our hands and make a lot of noise, so be it. But we deserve to get the same attention and the same monies for border security as every other federal crossing, border crossing in Canada. That's my speech for today. So that's my motion.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Gillis. Just so we can capture it correctly. Can you state the motion again?
So the motion is that I cannot allocate that to you through the chief. If what we want to do is explore the, I don't want to explore it, I don't want to be more, or help me out here, people can words now. We want to put forward a motion to our through our police services board to the federal government, acknowledging the fact that the city of Sarnia Police Services is located in an international port, who is doing adequate and effective policing on the navigable waters and the international border, but not getting the tools in order to do that. And there may be another wordsmithing. If you can make it a little prettier, that's fine.
Use AI.
Use AI, I don't say that. But anyway.
So I support the sense of the motion. I'm just wondering about the logistics. So our funding comes from the municipality. Now I'm not aware, maybe we do get funding from other levels of government.
So that's why we have to explore that. And I guess that's a good word to put in there. Because Windsor is getting everything. We're getting nothing. And we have just as many problems up here with border security as they do in Windsor. So how do we fit into that overall package, that overall border security envelope that the federal government has created? And we need to abide by.
So could I ask, perhaps we could ask the chief to prepare a report to speak to the issues that we've raised. Would that be, and then that would come back to the next meeting?
Yeah, take it from there.
Would that be okay?
Yes, that's a good one. That's it. As long as we get to the next step,
So
because this is important.
So the motion would be to ask the chief to prepare a report on opportunities or how other levels of government could support the Sarnia Police Service in executing its mandate, particularly with reference to an international border.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Does that, sorry, I don't know if you heard me, but I probably won't remember that, but basically we're going to ask the chief to prepare a report to just do some research on this, and that will bring it back to the next meeting, and then we can have a better sense of what we can approve and what we can't approve. Does that work?
Sure. But we need to, yeah, you're right. We need to investigate first.
Okay, so moved by Board Member Gillis, seconded by Board Member McRoberts. All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. Thank you for that. And Deputy, back to your report.
Thank you. The other part of this report focused on the downtown village constable project, that the pilot that we launched for the course of the summer. And I wanted to just highlight some of the work that he did there. And I think that the best way to evaluate his presence there is through the anecdotal interactions that I've had with people when I went out with him, as well as him reporting back on the relationships that he's built, the presence within those stores. And the one that I'd share with you very quickly is I stop at 7-Eleven commonly on my way into work to pick up my rocket fuel for the day. And the people in there were commenting on how appreciative they were to see that officer come in almost on a daily basis. So just passing through there. And I did stop in the Mitten Village as well and talk about this, as well and received the same kind of feedback. So it's been, I would say, he's proven his worth down there. Certainly through the summer months, and just complimenting the patrol officers and the work that they do on a daily basis with respect to those areas of the city that we highlighted. And I thought that that would mesh well with a couple of the other projects that we do. As I just alluded to, the downtown patrol, as well as what we call the Laurel Lee Park Patrol. And so I highlighted some of the statistics that we're able to glean from the officers' work with respect to those areas. And then I finally wrapped it up just with a impact update and the great work that they continue to do. And I would suggest that this summer looks drastically different than it did last summer with respect to policing in our downtown and commercial areas. And I would attribute a massive amount of that to the impact team. I saw Johnny sitting behind me here, who was a great member of that team through all of this transitional period. So subject to any further questions, that's my.
Can I ask, do we have any recognized encampments in Sarnia at this time? Or are they more or less just fairly dynamic, temporary?
I think the latter is the best way to describe them. And again, these are just my personal observations. Living in the city and traversing the city on a regular basis, I don't see them. I don't. They will appear, disappear. Again, like we need to credit bylaw and the outstanding work that they do and the cooperation that we've had with them. And I believe I highlighted this in that report as well, where now we have the ability to call bylaw directly from our communication center to say, here is a report of encampment, and them as being the first responders to the encampment issues are there immediately and addressing them. And the protocol that's in place and plans that we have, we are addressing these things immediately. And again, like compliments to the impact team and to all the officers of bylaw who've done an exceptional amount of work to ensure that how it looked last time does not reflect how it looks this.
Board Member Ash?
Through the chair, are there plans, considering the success that we've had in summer downtown patrol, perhaps, extending that to year? I mean, everybody wants to walk around in the winter. It can't be worse than what the summer was. But it has been successful, and things don't stop because the summer ends, right?
No, and we're going to evaluate that over the course of this next month to determine what we need to do. We are entering, despite summer would be a peak call time. As we get into the fall, we get into peak training time. And so there's going to be a lot of impact on our officers with respect to that. And we used an existing resource in redeployment. So we are constantly evaluating our deployments to see if we need to take from here or there to address our staffing challenges, I guess, at certain times. And by challenges, I mean the impact of other things on policing that just isn't the police work. So we'll be looking at that.
Board Member McCombs.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
I have a question. We have so many people that are living rough. So if an encampment is one person with a tent, one person, that's all it is. Where do we say these folks going? Where are they? Because they're still in the city. So I'm not saying there's a secret encampment somewhere, but are the shelters to the max? Are they hovering around the shelters? Where are they? Because we're still seeing the Morley on fire. So where they only take so many people in that building. Where are these folks laying their heads?
For you, Mr. Chair, I can't say specifically. I can say that we have continuous communication with the shelters to learn that they are still, I don't want to say at capacity because that's a choice that people make there. I think that there's always some availability, but I think that the fact that the people who may be living rough become just a little bit more transient and don't set up one spot, which then creates the loud voices essentially, where the persistence of it. So I think that that's probably the biggest factor in it, that they're just not centralized and congregating in one area, because we are responding to far more pop-up encampments or pop-up locations than we would have if Rainbow Park was still in operation. So I can't say specifically what they are.
Thank you.
Through the chair, and I know we're asking a lot of questions, but to me, that seems like it would make Sergeant Sotosante's job a little rougher. Not knowing where they are, at least if we know where the encampments are, we know where to find them.
Through Mr. Chair, fortunately, we have created a number of different avenues for people to report on. So we still get the calls. The bylaw still gets the calls. Inspector Murphy's working diligently on the AI hotline to give another avenue for people to report on that. So we are able to respond, and just to tie it into the building conversations. We're mobile. We are a mobile emergency services. Our impact team is no different, and we have the ability to get to where they are. So as long as we hear about it, we can get to them, no problem. So I don't think that the impact team isn't looking at this as our job is harder now. I think that they see the results of their work, which is resonating in the community. And then again, it's not about where, like the people who are living precariously, we're focused on the response to the community, and we're not hearing that. So we can say, hey, we're being successful because there's not continuous problems in a certain that's we can get to where they are, no problem anywhere they are.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 10. Actually, the last few items should be fairly brief, I think, as we move to the end of the meeting. Number 10 is the funding request from Crime Stoppers, great organization. So we gave them a grant of $25,000 last year, and they're asking for a grant of $25,000 for this coming year as well. And that would be funded from our board discretionary fund, which is a segregated fund to be used for the public good. So it certainly meets the criteria. So could I have a motion to approve that? So that's Board Member McRoberts, seconded by Board Member Ash. Any questions, concerns? All those in favor?
No, sure.
I think he was second, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, Board Member Sebastian, did you have a question, or were you seconding?
No, I was offering to second. Thanks, Paul.
I will look your way next time to ensure that we get you in as a seconder. So, all right.
That's okay.
So I think we approved that, so that's wonderful. And then that brings us to item 11, the FOI summary and IPC annual report. Deputy Chief Sickle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a legislative requirement, we are to report to you the disclosure of information that comes out of this service. So each year, our Freedom of Information staff compiles this report, just summarizing the amount of both formal and informal requests that they receive for information. The formal requests are the ones that we are required to report on to the commissioner. The informal ones we track just to track how busy they are, I guess. And as you can see through that report there, that some processes that we've put in place to report to our partner agencies more expeditiously has led to a decline in the number of informal requests from investigative agencies that we've received into our freedom of information office. So it just appears as though everything is consistent in 2020 that it was in 2023. It doesn't seem to be much of a change in the numbers.
So what's the time limit for that we're supposed to respond to requests? Is it 30 days or?
I was going to guess 30 days. I couldn't say specifically.
Because I thought we did quite well in terms of meeting those, most of them within 30 days. Like but I noticed there was a comment about at one point there was some staffing issues that may have delayed us.
Yes, and those have since been addressed where we provided more support to the singular person who was responsible for this stuff. There are some avenues for that person to take to request extensions in providing the information. It's also incumbent on police officers in providing the information that is required for them to meet those deadlines as well. But I can assure you that the staff that we have in there is hyper focused on their legislative requirements and hold everybody in this organization accountable to ensure that we get what we need to get in the timely fashion.
I was surprised at the number of requests.
And it's also to note the amount of scrutiny that each report must go through prior to it leaving our organization. And I think that that's probably what the public may not understand and why it sometimes takes a little bit longer is that each report must be read word for word and redacted with the required information prior to a report being sent out. It's not as easy as us just saying, okay, you can have it and click and send or print and provide it to them. There's meticulous work that needs to be done with each and every single report that leaves.
Questions, comments? Right, thank you very much. We'll move to the financial quarterly update. Kathy, so it's nice to see that we're on track for a balanced budget.
Yeah, for the chief. We're reporting our projection for year end to be approximately 91,000 in surplus position. This is just a forecast given the actuals up to June 30, and so still half the year to go. So, a lot can happen, but it's looking pretty good at this point.
Any questions or comments about the second quarter financial update? Okay. Good, thank you. And that leads nicely into the next item, which is yours too. At our meeting where we approved the 26-27 budget, the board had asked for some changes on the fly, which administration was able to incorporate. And so really these are the documents that incorporate those changes. So I don't know if you want to speak to it or if it stands as it is.
Yeah, I'll just take any questions on this. This is already approved at the previous meeting, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions or comments? Right, and that brings us to our open forum. I wanted to ask the chief a question. I did some notice on this. There's been some discussion in the community about unnecessary noise from vehicles, and I know it has come up at the board here before. The challenges of trying to address that without physically having an officer located 24/7 on the street. So I wanted to ask the chief or his delegate to help me understand how does the Sarnia Police Service, how is it best able to respond to noise complaints? Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Through Mr. Chair, I prepared a document in response to this, and I'll be happy to share it afterwards. But if you'll indulge me, I'll just go through a number of items here. Staff Sergeant McCabe, sitting over my shoulder here, also did a tremendous amount of work with respect to this, not just now, but in the past. As everyone can appreciate, Sandy Lane in the summertime and Canatera Park is a hotbed for activity. both during the day, into the evenings, and at night as well. So it's not new for us to hear about a complaint. However, I'll jump to the end of my presentation and tell you that it is far better now than it ever has been in the past. So we recognize the frustration that's caused by the issue and devoted significant amount of time and resources over many years to address the issues at Sandy Lane and Canatera Park. Officers have laid charges under both the Provincial Offences Act and the Criminal Code where appropriate, and we continue to respond to complaints whenever they are received. Enforcement, however, remains a challenge. Under the Highway Traffic Act, every motor vehicle is required to have a muffler in good working order to prevent excessive or unusual noise. And those are the key terms, excessive or unusual noise. There is also sections that prohibit drivers from causing motor vehicle to make unnecessary noise, and spinning the tires may be that as well, and that's also captured in stunt driving as well. There's further legislation that prohibits the operation of vehicles that do not comply with emissions regulations. While these provisions provide a framework for enforcement, convictions require clear and specific evidence. Many modern vehicles are factory equipped with adjustable performance modes that remain within legal standards, making it difficult to prove violations without specialized sound measuring equipment, which the police do possess. In addition, under Section 207 of the Highway Traffic Act, when a driver is convicted of an offense, the registered owner of the vehicle can also be held liable. These provisions allow us to lay charges after the fact if sufficient evidence, such as high-quality video, credible witness testimony, is available to support said conviction. It is also important to note that the Highway Traffic Act does not have a specific province-wide decibel limit for vehicles. Instead, it relies on the broad standard of prohibiting excessive or unusual noise. Some municipalities in Ontario, including Toronto, have attempted to define limits more precisely in their noise bylaws. In Toronto, stationary vehicles may not exceed 92 decibels when idling or 96 decibels at engine speeds above idle, when measurements are taken 50 centimeters from the exhaust outlet. So you can see how cumbersome this can become for an officer who is responding to a complaint or even just standing there with the vehicle. These local bylaws provide clear thresholds for enforcement, but they are not applied province-wide. In Sarnia, no such specific decibel limits exist, and officers must rely on articulating unnecessary noise under the Highway Traffic Act, which creates significant challenges in securing convictions. What we typically would do, like the thing that comes up the most is motorcycles, where they're modified to be as loud as they possibly can. And so the modifications to the mufflers is illegal, but on a motorcycle, it is an exposed piece of equipment, where on a car, on some cars, all you're going to see of the exhaust system is the round pipe that comes out the back. Even if you crawl underneath, you may not see anything at all. So it makes things challenges. What we rely on with respect to convictions for loud or excessive noise is when the motorcycle is sitting beside the police cruiser, and then you can articulate that I couldn't hear my police radio, I couldn't hear the radio, my eardrums were vibrating, and so then I entered into an investigation with respect to that vehicle and then did an inspection to determine that it has been modified. So quite cumbersome. So with cars, it's increasingly more difficult. So even if we were to employ these standards, we would be required to find committing and take the measurement at the time of the stop. Officers do not have ready access to noise measuring devices. Jurisdiction also presents challenges for us. Sandy Lane leads directly into Point Edward, which falls under the jurisdiction of the OPP. Offending vehicles can quickly leave Sarnia's patrol area, often before officers arrive in response to the complaint. This limits the opportunities for enforcement and creates further frustration with the residences. While police will continue to respond, gather evidence when possible, and enforce legislation when offenses are observed, the reality is that the service must prioritize all calls for service. With finite resources, noise complaints must be balanced against more urgent calls. Oftentimes, emotional complainants believe that the police can simply station an officer at their neighborhood, whether that be Canatera Park or anywhere else, and deal exclusively with their issues. This is completely unrealistic given the finite amount of resources that any police service has at their disposal. The constant presence of police will deter crime, but we can't always be there. Experience has shown that enforcement alone cannot resolve the issue. Each summer, a new group of young drivers and riders emerge, replacing those who eventually grow out of the behavior that we are trying to deter. As such, the only lasting solution lies in making the park itself less attractive for nuisance driving. Structural changes such as eliminating long straightaways in the parking lots, installing speed humps or other obstacles, and reconfiguring the gravel lot would reduce the opportunities for engines racing within there and revving. The city could also consider the use of gates at the park entrances to prevent access during closed hours, which would support police efforts to deter unauthorized use. However, this option is complicated by the fact that Canatera Park contains a number of residential properties, and the roadways through the park are actually the only Sarnia connection to Sandy Lane. For this reason, the installation of gates is unlikely to be a practical or permanent solution. Sarnia Police Service fully understands the impacts that vehicle noise has on residents living near Canatera Park, continue to respond to calls, enforce applicable legislation, and deter unauthorized activity during closed hours. Nevertheless, enforcement alone will never be sufficient to eliminate the problem. Jurisdictional limitations, evidentiary requirements, the absence of a provincial decibel standard or a city one, and limiting resources make it impossible to police this issue permanently. Meaningful long-term relief can only come from physical modification to the park's layout, which would address the root causes of nuisance driving, bringing lasting relief to the Sandy Lane community. And further to that, Staff Sergeant McCabe, who has conducted projects within the park in the past, has a number of avenues that we can pursue with respect to enforcement. But the interesting thing that he did was to contact the property manager of Sandy Lane. And so just for some statistical information here, there are 471 apartment units within that complex. Ballparking about 942 residents. And I want to read this line. The property manager went on to say they had a couple minor complaints at the Cove this year, but nothing compared to the past. Overall, they are pleased with what we have done and even appreciate our service reaching out for input this morning about this. We don't have any complaints, like we have one complaint with respect to ongoing issues at Sandy Lane. We respond to the complaints as they come in and address them. Oftentimes, it may be missed the impact that we've had on that. Anecdotally, again, when I was a patrol officer, we were in the Cove on a daily basis, dealing with excessive noise, excessive alcohol consumption, speeding through the park, accidents in the park, or the cars would be up on the rocks. We are doing a good job in Canatera Park and Sandy Lane, respectfully. So subject to any questions, that's our position on with what's happening in Canatera.
Well, thanks for the detailed response. I know now if I really want a detailed response, then question in advance, and there we go. So appreciate that. Anything else for the open forum from the board? Board Member Gills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this is even appropriate at this time, but we all know that there is a discussion with bringing in indwell into George Street. And many of the residents there are concerned that that's going to create a lot of problems. So from a policing perspective, I was wondering if we could get some sort of a report that, if that's possible, or not too lengthy, but to come to some sort of understanding. Is that going to be an issue for the Sarnia Police Service if that building goes in with what it's intended to use as at this particular time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think there's a lot of guesswork here. I think there's a lot of conversation. I don't even know how we'd even be able to put a meaningful report together because a lot of this is subjective belief. What I can say is if we go back in our history, we look at the issues we had in the River City community with drug use. A lot of challenges there. I know when I first arrived, that was a big concern. When that facility shifted to no drug use, big change. So I would expect that to be a very similar parallel. If drug use is permitted, you're going to see more policing related challenges. If drug use is not permitted, it tends to mitigate that, but it doesn't change the fact that we still have people facing significant addiction challenges in our community. So from a policing perspective, I know this is largely a political decision in terms of like where and how this is going to move forward. From a policing perspective, we will police whatever the city decides to do. But I would expect that it'll draw calls for service. It'll draw resources. I think that's a reasonable outcome of what I understand the project to be.
Yeah, and finally, what further complicates it is it seems to be that the city is being bypassed. County is pushing forward, have what they think the right recipe to do everything. And it's basically, oh, by the way, we're going to do this. So I think we need as a city to recognize that just what you said, just after drug use in the area, policing is going to go up, which means policing costs are going to go up. And that is not being factored in. So I appreciate that.
Board Member Roberts?
Just to continue on with that, I have a motion coming up at the county level, and I received a call yesterday. My motion was that the county council request Indwell to make this first building a drug-free building, because we do have the locations in River City that most of those individuals are on the binding list, so they would be a perfect move into that.
Yeah.
But as it was brought forward to me by their legal, that would be against the human rights to say no on the barrier of that building. So I said continue on with that motion and let that lie where it's going to lie. But I hope that they select individuals that may not be a conflict in that area, because what a nightmare. So now I need to add a motion to have every facility that's like this, right, have paid 24-hour appropriate security. So one security officer per so many people. They have to be able to do that because the city of Sarnia is going to be paying for this.
That's
We
right.
are paying for everything that happens here that requires police service, and unless they're looking after that responsibly, then they shouldn't be building it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move to the closed meeting report. We're going to discuss labor relations, deal with a complaint from the Inspectorate of Policing, and we'll deal with an HR issue. Can I look for a motion to adjourn to closed session? So Board Member McRoberts and Board Member Sebastian seconds. All in favor? We're adjourned. We'll take a 10-minute break or so, and then we'll come back. Thank you.